It doesn't really matter. I'm happy just being a speaker. It's totally fine. Or co-host.
Okay. Well, we get a lot of people that come up here, and we may because sometimes you have so many people that come up in these spaces and stuff. We get so many people that come up here, and we need to move you to co-host. I'll go ahead and do that just so we can free up an extra spot for anybody that may want to come up here and ask any questions. So shout out. I see a bunch of you guys up in the space tonight as well too. Give a shout out to my people over there in YouTube tonight. We're going to be talking to one task force members, Kamilah Moore. She's going to be sharing her expertise on the California reparations. There's been a lot of controversy going on as well, guys, about the cash payment as well too. Hopefully, we'll get some clarity on that tonight. I want to just thank everybody for coming in over on X/Twitter. I still got to call it Twitter. And shout out to you guys over there. The YouTube family, definitely go ahead and click the notification bell, share out tonight's broadcast, leave a comment, definitely share it on all your social media platforms. Like I said, we just want to go ahead and get into this topic tonight too, because like I said, there's been a lot of talk going on, a lot of articles. We've had multiple articles on Newstoter.com, and just about the actual, because you have so many different reparation things going on as well too. So did you want to start off, Kamilah? Did you want me to go ahead and there was an article I had from the actual site. I don't know if you want me to read it, or if not, you can just jump right in, and I have no issue letting you go ahead and, like I said, give your expertise on the situation.
You can start with the article. Just I think that might help frame just a little bit for me as well.
Okay. The article now, like I said, there's so many different articles, so it may be a little bit different than what you're going to actually be talking about tonight. But this is from one of our curation partners, the Neo Jim Crow. It says California reparation efforts to give money to Black people are spreading like wildfire. Will states soon start cutting checks? The backers of California's reparation efforts said last summer they want their recommendations to serve as a blueprint for other states and eventually the federal government when they perform the critical task of atoning for the nation's victimization of African Americans. So far, they're making progress to that goal of funding programs to benefit Black Americans as amends for the country's use of slavery between the 17th and mid 19th centuries and what supporters of reparations say were subsequent decades of discrimination. Efforts to fund reparations are underway in a slew of cities, counties, and states led by liberals, including Boston, Detroit, St. Louis, Fulton County, Atlanta, and New Jersey, among others. We're tracking efforts all across the country. An attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, Andrew Quinio, tells The Sun, adding that many of the efforts to cite California's progress is definitely spreading like wildfire. Mr. Quinio works in the Equality and Opportunity Practice Group of the Pacific Legal Foundation, a free market public interest law firm that has won 17 of the 19 cases it has brought to the Supreme Court. Despite California entering the Union as a free state in 1850 and deploying 17,000 soldiers to fight for the North, the highest per capita total of any state in the Union, the state has been leading the nation in reparation efforts. Backers of reparations cite California's hidden history of slavery as Black American slaves were forced to work the gold mines, and the state passed its own fugitive state law that legally protected slaveholders who had brought slaves to California before it was a state. The state's legislature Black Caucus last week introduced a package of bills, as the Sun reported, based on the lengthy report by the state's reparation task force, which the legislature established in 2020. Among the bills which are still being fleshed out, one aims to restore property taken during race-based uses of eminent domain to its original owners or provide another remedy such as compensation. Another bill would eliminate barriers to license people with criminal records and to prioritize African American applicants, especially descendants of slaves seeking occupational license. Other proposals include expanded access to STEM fields to increase enrollment for descendants of career technical education at high school and college levels, as well as formal recognitions and apologies for slavery and its effect on the descendants to this day. Although California's Proposition 209, passed by voters in 1996, prohibits the state from using affirmative action in public employment, education, and contracting, proponents of reparations see a pathway to work around the law. A failed ballot measure in 2020 sought to repeal Prop 209 altogether. Now the Black Caucus is signaling support for ACA 7, which aims to amend the state's constitution to allow loopholes in Prop 209, calling it unjust law and a barrier to helping vulnerable populations. It would amend the state's constitution to allow California to fund race-based programs if they aim to increase life expectancy, improve educational outcomes, or lift specific groups out of poverty. These exceptions will essentially swallow the rule that prohibits preferential treatment or discrimination based on race under Prop 209. In addition to state-level Prop 209 concerns, the Supreme Court ruling in the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard would stand in the way of not only education-related bills, but any proposals that seek to advantage or disadvantage individuals based on race and ancestry. He adds, reparations are essentially just affirmative action with a different label, he says. This is from Mr. Quinio with the Pacific Group. He says that reparations are essentially just affirmative action with a different label. He says the Supreme Court was very clear about the fact that eliminating discrimination means eliminating all of it, and the 14th Amendment isn't restricted to education. He says any bill that aims to provide benefits or advantages based on ancestry will be subject to strict scrutiny, and I think as currently proposed, these bills would not survive strict scrutiny, he notes. The Supreme Court has provided an immense amount of momentum, Mr. Quinio says, for those looking to end race-based initiative, government discrimination, or favoring of certain groups, yet there's a lot to be done in what's somewhat uncharted territory legally. He says as many industries, including the government, have been seeking ways to interject race and circumvent the Supreme Court's ruling banning affirmative action. Another effort underway in California that would not specifically listed in Black Caucus statement on reparation package is SB 1007, which would establish a homeowner's assistance for descendants of enslaved person program, making grants available to descendants of slaves for down payments or mortgage payments. I think it's going to be a big one, Mr. Quinio says, because of California's housing crisis. The big push for these things is a home ownership focus, so I think it's going to be one that they're going to cling on to this as reparation fight goes on. So like I say, I just wanted to go ahead and touch up on that. Now you can, Kamilah, you can go ahead and, at any point, anytime, you can go ahead and just, that like I say, so many different articles coming out, but you can go ahead and break down, some of this stuff going on with reparations, the actual, because I guess so many people are wondering too, and they're worried about, they see that California is kind of leading the way. So a lot of people all over the country kind of looking at you guys to see exactly how we do it. And I am one that believes that, it's going to have to be done on the federal level as well, too. But things get started on the state level, the local level as well, too. So the structure and everything else, a lot of us believe you could set the way for how the actual federal government does it. But if you don't mind, just go ahead and share exactly, since you've been on the actual reparations task force, just, exactly what's going on at this point in time and how things looking with reparations out there in California.
Okay, thank you so much for that intro, and thank you for reading that article. And that article was definitely written by, conservative think tank. I think you said Pacific Legal Group, and I'm not casting aspersions. I'm genuinely thanking you for reading that article because we need to be prepped and primed to understand the arguments of folks who are actually anti-reparations. So, like when you're reading that article, I heard quotes from, some of the folks who lead that think tank, casting aspersions against race-based initiatives, but then also they're already trying to think of arguments around, striking down any legislation that's based on lineage, right? They're pretty much trying to put lineage in the same boat as race. And so, that's just an interesting kind of observation for folks deep in this space. So in terms of an update where we are, just really quickly, the task force, which I was the chair of, if we're talking about cash payments right now, the task force strongly recommended cash payments. In fact, the 9-member task force hired 5 economists, including Dr. Darity and Dr. William Spriggs, who actually passed away a month before our final hearing this past summer. And they worked for over a year and a half to compile data and evidence to support a claim against the state of California for discriminating against descendants of slaves in 5 areas. So the first area was unjust property takings, right? They compiled sufficient evidence and data to show the state of California was responsible for, a certain a requisite amount of unjust property takings of, Black Americans' land. Health harms is another area or atrocity area. They compiled data showing that, for instance, there is a 7-year life expectancy gap between Black Californians and white Californians. So that was the second area where the task force said Black Americans who descend from slaves should be compensated for. The third area was devaluation of Black businesses. We found that there were, I think, like 30, 40, if not more, 1,000 missing Black businesses in this state, comparing the rate of Black business ownership in the state of California to states across the country. We, through their data, showed that that's over $100 billion lost annually in revenue due to these missing Black businesses in the state, and over 1 million jobs lost. And that's due to, again, the state of California discriminating against Black folks who were trying to form businesses and maintain their businesses. The fourth state-sanctioned atrocity we said that there should be compensation for is housing segregation, because we showed proof of California perpetuating housing segregation through redlining and racially restrictive covenants and other forms of housing segregation. And then the fifth area that we said that the state should compensate us for was mass incarceration over policing, particularly starting in the late 1970s to present. And so I just wanted to lay that out there to say that there does seem to be some confusion about what the task force recommended versus what the Legislative Black Caucus has chosen on its own to introduce as their first bill package. So just to conclude, then I'll take a brief pause. The task force, we strongly recommended cash payments. Myself and
You still there?
Myself and Jovan Scott. Sorry, I just got a call. Myself and Jovan Scott Lewis, we were on the Economics Advisory Committee, and we, kind of led that process. And so, yes, we recommended cash payments for those 5 areas: mass incarceration and over policing, housing segregation, unjust property takings, health harms, and devaluation of Black businesses. And so the task force concluded our work June 29th of 2023. And so over the past 7 months or so, the California Legislative Black Caucus has, said they have been studying our report and strategizing amongst themselves at the caucus of Black elected officials within the California State Legislature to, choose out of the 115 recommendations, which were the first ones they were going to introduce. And so, as you all know, January 31st, the CLBC, the Legislative Black Caucus, did a press conference announcing the 14 bills that they were introducing as their quote-unquote reparations priority bill package. And of note, yes, cash payments is not within that package. Then also just one last comment for now, just to give a more comprehensive update, you have State Senator Stephen Bradford, who was on the task force. He introduced his own legislation based on the task force's recommendations this past summer, and then he introduced a few more on February 1st, so a day after the CLBC introduced their 14. So there's about a little bit less than 20 bills out there right now that are, reparations, quote unquote, legislation based on the task force's final report.
All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that's been a big issue though. Everybody's been talking about the actual cash payments, and I saw a lot of posts last week. A lot of people were saying, "Well, hey, that basically there would be no cash payments," and that everybody was talking about stuff outside the actual cash payments. What's been the task force relationship with the actual Black Caucus, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a good question. And there has been, I mean, they went to the last hearing. Some of the members of the Legislative Black Caucus went to the last hearing. They made remarks. But there has been no, like, collective meeting between the task force and the Black Caucus at post the task force ending. So there are two elected officials who served on the task force and are thus a part of the Black Caucus. So you have Senator Steve Bradford and Reggie Jones Sawyer. They sat on the task force and they're also within the Black Caucus. But, you know, other than that, and then also you had 6 task force members, Cheryl Grills, Don Tamaki, Senator Bradford, Reggie Jones Sawyer, Javon Scott Lewis, and Lisa Holder. They created an organization almost called the Alliance after the task force was created. And through public interviews and media, I think there was some type of, attempt of the Alliance to kind of have a formal relationship with the Legislative Black Caucus, to kind of shepherd through the recommendations. And I've just, heard that, Legislative Black Caucus, for instance, they really just wanted to keep within themselves and kind of, strategize amongst themselves and choose amongst themselves, which recommendations they wanted to introduce first.
Okay, thank you. Anybody that wants to come up here and speak to, guys, just go ahead and raise your hand up. If there's any questions that you want to direct to Kamilah, definitely come on up here and ask her some questions. I trust that you guys haven't had much communication with the governor Newsom out there, then have you?
No, and Dr. Grills, who was actually appointed by the governor to be on the task force. I was appointed to be on the task force by the then Speaker of the State Assembly, Anthony Rendon. But for instance, Dr. Grills, who was appointed to the task force by Governor Newsom, and in a public interview with Dominique DePrima, Dominique DePrima pretty much asked her that question, what has been the relationship between the task force and Newsom? And, she even said there's been limited to no communication. As far as I know, I've never talked to him. As far as I know, the task force as a whole has never talked to him, which it might be surprising to folks. That might be a bad thing. I don't know. Might be a good thing. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Newsom signed the legislation into law that created the task force. And, that's kind of his utility. And then his utility will be needed again when it's time to use his pen to, sign, significant legislation into law. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Wendell, I see you came up here. Did you want to ask a question?
I want to thank you, Newstoter, for hosting this, and for Kamilah Moore for doing all the exhaustive work that she's done. I appreciated her summary of the priorities in terms of mass incarceration, in terms of housing, in terms of missing businesses, and the property and health. But I just wondered, how was maybe she can't, the Legislative Black Caucus able to not come up with cash payments? When I think about how, when the Japanese were in turn around, the legislator approved $25,000 each, $50,000 for the Japanese that were during World War II, and how after World War II, the Jews who were, 3 years of the Holocaust, there were cash payments to them, and also for the state of Israel. From the 1950s, they've been paid billions of dollars in grants and military assistance. And also for the 9/11 victims, they received various forms of cash payments. I'm just curious how is that the Legislative Black Caucus in California wasn't able to come up with cash payments. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but something doesn't make sense to me.
Right. And so, I agree with you. And I think maybe, for instance, I started this in another space. There's this polling that came out right after the task force concluded by UC Berkeley Intergovernmental Studies. And there were three major findings, right? The three major findings were in order, right? One, the majority of Californians polled, and so they extrapolated that to say, the majority of Californians more broadly agree that the state is doing too little for Black people. The majority of Californians also agree that the legacy of slavery still impacts Black people. But, the majority, 59% of Californians, those polled, were against cash payments. And I think Black Californians were the only group that, was by and large in support of cash payments. All other groups, non-Black and white, were against it. And so, that made lots of headlines. And, while the California Legislative Black Caucus, they are Black elected officials, many of them don't, live or serve majority Black districts. And so, again, I can't speak for the CLBC, right? I, again, have not had a formal conversation with them about this package, at least not yet. But, again, just kind of me theorizing. I'm thinking that could potentially have a part in it, where even though, again, the task force hired 5 economists, right? We didn't just pluck a number or come up with a number, out of thin air, right? We gathered actual data to show improved state culpability, right? And so there's no question that the state is responsible for these monies. It's really, I guess, a question of political will, but then also political influence. Maybe some of these CLBC members, a lot of them have just gotten into the legislature. So do they have the political clout, so to speak, to pull this off, a cash payments bill at this time? I don't know. There's a lot of factors to play into it. But I will say, just to conclude, the task force, we strongly recommended cash. One, because that was part of our mandate. I say it all the time as a reparatory justice scholar, compensation is a necessary element for reparations under international law. The task force was a legislative advisory commission, so our official role was to advise the legislature on the types of reparations proposals they should adopt. So if we have the responsibility to formulate our recommendations based off of international law, which also included cash compensation, then I personally argue that that same role and responsibility should extend to the legislature as well.
Yes. I'm glad you clarified that, because you went into the model of international law, and I think, again, I don't remember exactly, the attorney that handled the 9/11. That was, unfortunately, that was a very devastating attack to American national security. But again, they were cash payments. So and I'm glad that you clarified that the members of that caucus, they do serve non-minority and probably majority white districts. So they have a political, their consequences if they, don't do things that their citizens don't support. But I guess, again, when I look at it from just the purely perspective of a damage, and I'm glad you said restorative justice, there has to be a cash payment. If there is not a cash payment, what type of restorative justice is that? And so, again, I go back to as I said, the Japanese, I'm repeating myself, they got 50,000, and the European Jews, as a matter of fact, the U.S. legislature, they're approving, 17 trillion to Israel, which is, there are no strings attached. Whether you not agree with that, that's $17 billion. Over the past, 40 years, the state of Israel has gotten hundreds of billions of dollars, with billions of that with unrestricted. So again, it just doesn't make a legal sense to me. And I'm glad you clarified your position. It just doesn't make a legal model for me how you can spend 2 years and not come up with it. And I'm glad you all came up with a cash payment, but how the Black Caucus could not do it as a model of legal justice, restorative justice. So thank you. I appreciate that. And again, thank you, Newstoter, for taking the time to do that and reading the article, and all the people that are listening, because we're looking at California, and we want them to do the right thing. And it's important that they restore cash payments as part of the bills that they should be submitting. So they should really look at that and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendell. Real quick, Kamilah, the Black Caucus we're talking about now, is this the Congressional Black Caucus, or are we talking about the Black Caucus out here in California, where you guys at?
So we're just talking about the state of California Black Caucus. So the Black elected officials within the California State Assembly and the State Senate.
Okay, just checking. I thought that's what we was talking about, but I just wanted to clarify that. Now, let me ask you a quick question. The actual background of the actual the Black Caucus out there in California, would you say that? I know you probably don't know for a fact, but would the people that's on there, the actual Black people, they all be descendants of American chattel slavery, or are they actually, maybe someone with a immigrant background?
As far as I know, there's only about 11 or so of them. I think, as far as I know, all of them are descendants of slaves in the United States. I could be wrong, but I think all of them are. Maybe save like one or two, but I think all of them are. But don't quote me.
I know. I know that was kind of that question. Like, well, I don't know their backgrounds. I just wanted you to answer to the best of your ability. But it's nothing. I was just wondering exactly, because you're right. I know California. We know some of the actual, the population, and we know how much of the actual Black population is actually shrinking out there as well too. So I know from a political standpoint, a lot of people are actually thinking about their careers and their political future. So they don't want to go ahead and piss off a lot of people, because, like you say, not just white folks are against actual of reparations, but a lot of Latinos out there and the Asians as well. They're also against it as well too, because a lot of these groups feel like, hey, it's going to give Black people a leg up on them, and they don't want to see that. But we got a couple hands up in here, so I'll go ahead and I'll get to them real quick. Shout out to everybody coming up in the space. Everybody coming up in the space, guys. Make sure you go ahead and retweet out this space. Please go ahead and retweet out the space. Same for my people over there in YouTube. Go ahead and share it, leave a comment. Definitely click the notification bell as well, too. So I'm going to get the Black. Kamilah, did you want to say something before we get to the speakers?
Yeah, just really quickly, since there's like a good amount of people in the room, I just put something in the chat. CJEC and other organizations like LEAP, they are, doing a call to action, where if you click the link, you can send an email to the California Legislative Black Caucus demanding a stronger reparations bill package with direct cash payments. And actually, I just wanted to also say the deadline for the California Legislative Black Caucus to introduce new bills is February 16th. So it's coming up. So who knows? A miracle can happen. Like with your engagement, you sending off an email, helping us in this fight, there might be a critical mass that pushes them to introduce a cash payments bill before this deadline that's coming up. So you can click the link in the Jumbotron for more information.
Okay, well, thank you. We got a few hands up. We got Black Majority State, Alexis, Mark Carter. Black, how you doing tonight? Go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I got a couple questions. I guess I'll do one and then come back up or something like that so people can go. So the first question I have is, did the task force have any authority to force cash payments?
No, because our role was advisory in nature. So we didn't have any power to implement our own recommendations. Our only power, so to speak, was to, kind of make recommendations to the legislature on the type of proposal that they should adopt. Like, so practically speaking, for instance, while I was on the task force, and I got a lot of heat from this, I don't even want to get into who I got heat from, but while I was on the task force, I actually ran for elected office to be in the state Senate, I believe, because I knew, I was like, okay, there needs to be a strong legislator in the state legislature that's going to introduce these recommendations, particularly the stronger, most controversial ones. Right? There needs to be legislators in there that are not afraid to do that. And so I was like, well, I'm going to run. I didn't win. I mean, it was a very impulsive decision, but, I still made that effort or whatever, because I knew at the end of the day that my role as the chairperson of this historic task force was limited, in the sense that we could only advise or suggest recommendations. We couldn't do anything necessarily to help implement them in that way.
Alrighty. Thank you, Black. Like you said, you got another question, you go ahead and always put your hand back up and we'll come back around to you. Anybody that comes up here to speak, guys, go ahead and put your hands up so we can kind of keep an order of everything as well, too. We will definitely go ahead and get to you guys as well, too. Alexis, how you doing tonight?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for hosting this space. It's really wonderful. I don't really have a question so much as a comment. I would like to, first of all, thank Kamilah Moore for all the work she has done on the task force. I think it's been brilliant. You continue to do the great things, and thank you for the clarifications tonight. I do want to say this, and I thought Black Majority State might go there. I'm going to say it very quickly. We have to understand that California is not able to mint money, nor is Alabama, nor is Minnesota. The only entity that can mint money in this country is the Congress, the federal government. So the gentleman before was talking about reparations that was paid to the Japanese, things like that. I'm not saying that things can't happen from a monetary standpoint on the state level, but in order to really fund the bill, it's going to be federal. So Black state majority means that we can have 2 senators and at least 1 Congress member in the Congress, and you can hold up federal funding and get, the willingness of other senators to fund reparations. But anyway, I just wanted to say, great work thus far. I appreciate all you've done.
All right.
And anything other than that situation about getting federal reparations, if you don't get it from the federal government, people may come up and say something different, but Black state majority power is the way to go. And I'm done.
Thank you, Miss Alexis. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let me go ahead and get to Mark, and then we got you, Genghis.
Listen, real simple.
So why should I let him speak when he called me an ignorant B word?
Oh, well, I didn't. Wait, hold on. I did not know that. Let me just say this right here. If there's any beefs in here, we don't know anything about any beefs, anything like that. So, I'm just assuming that everybody's coming up here to speak. So I did not know anything like that. Mark, she is a guest speaker, so she does not want to.
I'm not even addressing her. I'm talking to her. I don't even want to talk to her. So the thing is this, right? We act as if I'm
not comfortable with him speaking.
Okay. Well, Mark. Well, hold on, Mark. Hold on, Mark, because I don't have a problem with you, but she is the actual guest speaker tonight. So she's saying that she don't want you to speak. I'm gonna have to go ahead and respect that. I'll get you back up here, and I'll see if she'll, if she doesn't mind you speaking or whatever. But apparently she has an issue with it. So, okay, like I say, I'm gonna say this for the room. I don't know any personal beefs that anybody may have in the space with each other. So, I'm just putting that out there real quick, Kamilah. If somebody comes up here and they have an issue with you, I'm not aware of it. So I'm just letting everybody know that as well too. We will be respectful in here tonight. We won't call the speakers or the host any names, anything like that as well. We're going to try to keep this as educational and professional as possible, guys. Nobody comes up here cursing with profanity, yelling, screaming. Just come up here, articulate whatever you have to say. If you have a disagreement with somebody, then let's just move forward, move on, because like I say, that's not the actual topic of the space. We're trying to go ahead and get some clarity on the situation that's going out there in California, because there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of people saying this and that or whatever. So we're just trying to go ahead and find it out, but we're not trying to have a blow up here as well too. So let me go ahead and get to Genghis. Genghis, go ahead and unmute your mic.
All right, y'all. Thank you for letting me speak. I got a question for
Hey Genghis, hey Genghis, do you got your earbuds in anything?
No, can you hear me better?
Yeah,
I can hear him fine.
you just kind of low, but go ahead.
This is a question regarding the California Black Caucus for Kamilah. In your opinion and expertise, what is the point of having a Black Caucus in California if they're not there to serve the constituents? Because most of the Black constituents, at least, because most of their voter base are not actually Black people. So isn't that like a fangless wolf or a tiger with no claws? What's the point of having a Black Caucus if you Black people?
I agree that these are great questions to pose and to particularly pose to the CLBC. And then just to add on to that critique, I have my own critiques where a lot of Black elected officials, even if and when they serve majority Black districts, they're still not necessarily catering to their districts. They still, in some instances, maybe catering to, for instance, the nonprofits that they kind of were shepherded and raised to become elected officials through, right? Where we see elected officials reserving millions of dollars in the state budget to nonprofits that they came up from. But then, the legislation that they're introducing as reparations, that should be going to, their majority constituents are, for instance, notifying, the community if there's a grocery store closure, or, just benign things like that in the grand scheme of things, or, making sure that certain books aren't being banned in prisons. Yes, that was in our report, that those were things that we highlighted, but again, it's important, to your point, to highlight those contradictions. The more we highlight, particularly to the people who need to be held accountable, I think the more progress we'll see.
Thanks for that answer. It just appears to me that as a population in California, we have no power. And if you need any proof, look at the Black Caucus. This is sad. And I'll land.
Real quick, Kamilah, I want to ask you a question. Like some of the big time politicians out there in California, Black politicians, Maxine Waters and Karen Bass, are they supporting reparations?
I think they're generally supportive. They haven't necessarily directly engaged with the task force and the outcomes, not that I know of, but I know that, they're generally supportive of the concept. But I think because, maybe because Congresswoman Waters is kind of, her real house is the federal level, and then now Mayor Bass, her real house is more local level. Los Angeles does have its own city-based reparations commission. So, we're talking about these particular recommendations. These are state-based recommendations that relate to Governor Newsom once, that legislation passes the state assembly and the state senate. But at this stage, you have the the California Legislative Black Caucus that is, introducing the first set of bills.
Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and get
that question real quick.
Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Ms. Kamilah? So, the question is, I wanted to ask, come to think of it now. So, mentioning Maxine Waters, Karen Bass, and all that other stuff, it seems to me when I talk to like a lot of elder Democrat elected officials or whatever, and just people that are Democrats in general and that understand the reparations legislation, they seem to be more geared towards HR 40, because that seemed to be the pushback I get from these folks out here in New Jersey. So have you had that type of pushback? Well, we got to get HR 40 signed and passed in order to obtain any type of reparations. Go ahead.
Maybe at the beginning of the task force's work in like 2021, 2022. But I I mean, well, if we're talking about cash payments, an interesting observation, I'm pretty sure y'all probably also observed it. It's often a lot of older, like after the news came out, about the CLBC not introducing cash, it was a lot of older people, Black Americans who were like, not expecting for there to be cash in the initial bills, but also saying like, they wanted to prioritize other things like non-monetary policies over cash. So, thinking that it'll be wasted away, and those types of arguments. Surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, I heard a lot of that from older Black Americans who were actually kind of satisfied with what the CLBC introduced, at least for now. So I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, I do, because again, I sat on the Economic Advisory Committee within the task force, and we made the decision to hire economists. They're the ones who came up with all this data to prove that the state is responsible for, compensating Black Americans. So, it's not a question of whether we're owed through the work that the task force did. So from that point, it really makes no sense why cash was not included, outside of obviously, there's some lack of political will or even influence to introduce it.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and get to so we got a new speaker up here, Rella. Go ahead and unmute your mic. How you doing tonight?
Can I speak?
Who's that speaking?
That's Wendell. Just hold on, raise your hand.
Hey, Wendell, Wendell, you got to raise your hand. And let me, not only that, raise your hand, but also we got a new speaker up here. You spoke and Black majority states spoke, so I got to go ahead and get to a new speaker. Rella, how you doing tonight? Go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hey, Newstoter and everybody. So I have a, it's so cold, I'm sorry, excuse me, thank you. So my question is I understand, it's kind of loud. I'm sorry. So my question is, because the conversation is definitely always surrounded by, having representation and seeing how things went down with the task force and how even, representation was split because of ideologies or people's beliefs in regards to the historical record of American descendants. My question is, what should we actually be looking towards as far as legislation, no matter if we have a majority in the state or if we do not, like in the state of California, because Black Americans only represent the 5%, but there is historical record of harms, which is documented. So what should we be working towards in any particular capacity to prepare for reparations and not necessarily just looking forward to governors or certain politicians, but what can the citizens actually do, no matter where they are, to actually start to prepare to discuss reparations and trying to get their voices heard? Because it seems as if even if we migrate, yes, even if we migrate as we are doing as a forced migration, it just seems that there's still harms that should be addressed in all states, because slavery was an improved economic force for particular groups of people across the country. And so I hope I'm kind of clear. I feel like my mind is kind of all over the place, but if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, I'll start with California and say, what can folks do? Again, that call to action, right? Going to the California Black Caucus website or clicking that link in the Jumbotron, emailing them, demanding a stronger reparations bill package, including direct cash payments before the February 16th deadline. But then outside of that, let's say they don't do it by the February 16th deadline, there's still legislation that you can support that will set descendants up for cash payments in the next legislative session or by other means, right? So, I'm not saying that you have to support the things that clearly you don't support, but at the very least, there is some legislation when you think critically and read it and analyze it that sets descendants up for cash payments later. Like Senate Bill 490, which is Bradford's bill, that would create a new state agency. And within that agency, there would be like a financial office that would process claims for cash payments based on those atrocity areas that I mentioned, those 5 areas that I mentioned that the task force recommended there be compensation for. And so when you read Senate Bill 490, that compensation, direct cash compensation, that's in the legislation. That's, again, part of the functions of one of the offices or branches within that agency. So that's one of the most actually critical piece of legislation that actually absolutely has to pass for cash payments to actually be a viable thing in the near future. If, again, the COBC doesn't, introduce something cash payments related, by in a few days. There's other legislation that I can highlight too, but I think for the purposes of this space, Senate Bill 490 is the bill to support that's directly related to getting us to cash payments.
All righty. Let me go ahead and get to Black majority state, and that Negro, I'm gonna get to you next as well.
Just real quick, hey, Window, we had to drop you down. Your phone messed up, brother. Come on back up here. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So in the graphic display, when that report is being posted online, there's a Black woman that they keep showing, and I don't know if you address who she is, if she's in the California legislature or whatever. And that's kind of one of the questions. But then I do want to go this because you kind of got into the programs a little bit. So my question is, of the programs, and again, her face is listed under what they are calling these different non-direct cash payments. So how much would each of the 2 million Black Americans receive in a dollar amount, even though it's not going to be cash, but what is the equivalent value for these programs? And then are there any of these programs in which 100% of a home would be paid for? And are there any programs that would lead to Black American descendants having contracts with the state of California inside of what she has put up?
I can't find the picture that you're referencing. I'm sorry, but you're referencing. Are you referencing legislation that's been introduced, or are you referencing the task force recommendations, or a task force member?
No, with the because I'm assuming you pass it off to the state legislators, and then they're the ones who are essentially saying no direct cash payments. So I'm talking about where it's at now and what programs that she's referencing or they're referencing in terms of are they going to pay 100% of home ownership, and are they going to set up state contracts with Black American descendants in the state of California?
Right. Okay, so I know of the housing-related, quote-unquote, reparations legislation that has been introduced by Senator Bradford. I don't know if there's a woman legislator that has introduced something housing-related, but I'll just name off the bills that are housing-related. So SB 1007. That's the bill that would provide housing grants to descendants of slaves to purchase their first home, or to provide mortgage assistance for those who already have a home, and to provide homeowners insurance to them as well. That's a bill that Senator Bradford introduced the day after the CLBC announced their 14 bills January 31st. He announced his February 1st. And then you have Senate Bill 1013 that would provide property tax relief to descendants in formerly redlined communities. Bradford introduced that as well February 1st. And then I forgot the exact number of the bill, but there's another bill that was introduced just a few days ago that was co-sponsored by Lola Smallwood Cuevas, who is a Black woman legislator, but it was introduced by Bradford, and it would provide an opportunity for people to get their land back or get cash in alternative if they can show or prove that the government took their land via a racially motivated eminent domain process. And as far as I read that bill is not limited to descendants of slaves. It's for anyone in California who can show that they had their land taken via racially motivated eminent domain. And in some instances, in California, there is history of, non-Black groups who have, had their land taken away in a way that you can argue has been racially motivated as well. So those are the bills thus far that are related to housing, as far as my best knowledge.
I had a question, Kamilah, in reference to.
Hey, Wendell.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can I also say, as far as I know, there has been no legislation related to, a contracting quota or, contracting set-asides or, not even that, but, any legislation related to contracting, so to speak, for descendants. Just wanted to answer the full question.
Hey, Wendell, we'll get right to you because you had dropped down. So I assume that you had just dropped down, but we got another speaker up here, that Negro, and then I'll get to you. That Negro, go ahead and unmute your mic.
Just keep your hands raised, y'all. Keep your hands raised. Yes, sir. Newstoter, Brother DJ, salute to both y'all for making this happen. We appreciate you.
What's up now?
Hey, DJ. Hey, man. Peace, power, and Negro reparations to the room, specifically for the descendants of the Black American Negroes who built this country with slave labor, per the lands promised in Special Field Orders 15, January 16th, 1865. Miss Kamilah Moore, thank you very much for coming and kind of hearing our input, feedback. I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed, like many of us were, from hearing those words, about the cash reparations part. I am definitely a federal reparationist type of guy, so I kind of saw it coming. First and foremost, my first question is, I put up in the Jumbotron some scholarship. I know that you have done some work or talked with Talent. He was one of the amazing Negroes that helped us craft this legislation that's up in the Jumbotron. And I was wondering, I've shared it everywhere. Have you been able to look at that at all?
No, not yet, but I would love to take a look at it for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's up in the Jumbotron for sure. I just put it up there. And from the Negro perspective, we like to come from logic as well as the easiest way to get something done. And so what that resolution, the Negro resolution that we had written up, what that focuses on is true repair, infrastructure, and everything included, which 20 of our ancestors sat down, Special Field Orders 15, and crafted with true repair for our people, even down to the Navy boat. We were supposed to get a Negro Navy ship in the fleet of the Navy. It is that without those extra extensive stretches towards infrastructure and giving us ways to protect the money that we do gain when we are paid the debt that's owed. I just, I would humbly ask any of us in this room or anyone in further endeavors, please use the language that our ancestors crafted with preciseness like we've never seen before. I truly believe that's the way. And yeah, so I highly encourage you, and even if you don't get back to me, Ms. Moore, if you could get back with talent, because I know you guys have a colleague relationship as far as talking and sharing information. If you could let him know what you think, and I truly believe that this is the way for rural repair, and that Special Field Orders 15. So I just wanted to know, maybe the last question would be, why wasn't more of the original Special Field Orders language used for the task force outcomes? And I'll yield the mic with that. Again, thank you for listening, and thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Kamilah. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Well, I know the second question, but I'm sorry, I didn't remember the first question. But I think to your second question, I think that's a good point. I'm not really sure. I think, we're the first state to kind of do this. And so, and I know it sounds kind of crazy to say, like, we were, building the ship as we were flying, because it was just such a quick process between the time that Newsom signed the legislation into law to, interviewing whoever would apply, or, appointing whoever, got on the task force, and then, the study phase to the development phase, and, the decisions to hire 5 economists. Like, this week kind of just were weak. And so there's learned I would be admit from this process. But I think the eligibility criteria, that we used was, you are eligible if you are a descendant of a free or enslaved Black person living in the United States prior to 1900. That's a motion that Task Force member Joe Bon Scott Lewis introduced. And, at the time, that was just kind of the language that was used to, distinguish it from being race-based. But I think we're in the legislative phase, because remember, our task force was just advisory in nature. And so the legislation is what really matters. And so to that end, there's always room and opportunity for improvement, but then also, would be the time to make any corrections based on, analyzing what worked and what didn't with the task force.
All right. Thanks.
And that, sorry, Newstoter. So the thing that I shared up in the Jumbotron, Ms. Moore, is actually the legislation that I've submitted here in Washington State, and hopefully talent, myself, and some other people will be introducing in DC on the 15th of April this year. So please let us know what you think, and if you have any input or critiques. And I'll land right there. Thanks again, Newstoter.
No problem. Real quick, guys, up in the Jumbotron, we got the YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead. It's on the far left-hand side. Go ahead and subscribe. You can subscribe while the actual space is going on. For those that can support us on Cash App, $Newstoter, $Newstoter. Newstoter is the largest Black-owned Black American news media curation platform today in America. Once again, $Newstoter, $Newstoter. For those that do not have Cash App, we have the Venmo and PayPal up in the Jumbotron. For those on YouTube, we have the Cash App. You can see that on the actual screen. And we have the Venmo and PayPal up in the actual description. Tomorrow night, guys, we're going to be holding a space. It's about the illegals and the debit cards that they're getting. And we're also going to be talking about this article that just came out today. And I went ahead and it's up, and it's been gaining a little bit of traction as well, too. It's talking about the descendants of the Tuskegee experiments, that they're going to go ahead and give them $5 million in scholarships, to attend college. So we're going to be talking about those two topics tomorrow night: illegals with debit cards and the descendants of the Tuskegee experiment being given $5 million in scholarship money to attend colleges. So definitely check us out tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on here on X. And for those that's going to be on YouTube, we'll probably start around by 8:05 over there. So guys, definitely check us out. And like I said, for those that can support us on Cash App, once again, $Newstoter, $Newstoter. We definitely need the support, and we survive off of your generosity. Let me go ahead and get to Wendell. Wendell, go ahead and unmute your mic, and then I got you, Divine C, as well too.
Thank you. Again, Newstoter, thank you for hosting the space, and Kamilah Moore for all the work you've done the last 2 years. Just to refresh, Ms. Moore, can you repeat Bill 490 in reference to cash payments? Was that submitted to the legislator? And also, my other question, has the National Congressional Black Caucus been in contact with you or Biden's office in reference to gathering any information or ideas that you may have? Because the question becomes, why should we vote for Biden if when he was running, he said that he supported HR 40, which I don't agree with. There was enough information. We didn't need to have hearings. But the bottom line is that I don't think it's on his agenda to do reparations. So again, the first question is, you mentioned Gentleman Bradford and Bill 490, which deals with cash payments. Can you restate that, and also answer whether or not Jean-Pierre or Biden's administration has been in contact with you? Thank you.
Thank you. So to the second question, has Biden administration or his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, been in contact with me personally? No. To other members of the task force, not to my knowledge. I will say in 2022, in the summer, when we released our interim report, so a year prior to this year, right? His press secretary was asked a question about the California Reparations Task Force, whether at an official press conference, right? A reporter asked whether Biden had Biden task force, heard about this report, would make any official comment on reparations more broadly. And so she kind of punted the question and just like, we haven't, necessarily heard of it, but I forgot what she said, but she kind of punted and said like, they believe in a study of reparations. So I say all that to say that's the last time, like June 2022, that, the Biden administration has acknowledged or made any comment about the California Reparations Task Force in particular. I know this past summer, a White House reporter asked her a question about Representative Cori Bush's bill that she had introduced, which is significant because unlike HR 40, it includes an actual dollar amount for what the United States would owe based on, I think, consulting with Dr. Darity. So Cori Bush's bill has a $14 trillion figure in her bill. And so I think this past summer was like the last time Biden has even Biden through his press secretary has talked about reparations. And again, he kind of I think their official position is they think that it should come through the Congress, right? That they would support a study via congressional action. That's been their position for a while. And so SB 490 is the bill that would establish this agency, and it's related to cash payments because it would create within the office a branch that would process direct cash payments for descendants of slaves based on those 5 areas. And so just to break down that a little bit more, descendants would be eligible generally for those 5 areas, and then you could also be eligible for additional compensation with like further kind of evidence of harm in those particular areas. But again, the task force, we recommended that all Black Americans who descend from slaves should be eligible for compensation without any added proof of harm based on our lineage, right? You know, for instance, you know, you can say that just because, you know, someone, you know, a Black American hasn't necessarily been incarcerated them personally, that they still haven't been affected by mass incarceration or policing in some way, right? And so we're all generally impacted by that, and so we're all generally owed. But then also, if there's any further, you know, specific instances of harm in those areas, then those particular people would be eligible for additional compensation.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and get to Divine C. Divine C, go ahead and unmute your mic.
Evening, blessings to everybody. My question is probably not that smart or a question, but it's probably been answered. But I wanted to know if California didn't really have slavery itself, would the reparations that they try to pay out only be for like redlining and the attacks on the, you know, the oppression of the people there? Like, what would happen with that? That's my question.
It's not a dumb question at all. I think we were talking about cash, like compensation. I think the task force, we did say that there should be some compensation to, let's say, you know, descendants of slaves who had ancestors who were slaves in California, because, you know, there was slavery in California. Like there wasn't as many slaves as there were in the South. There, you know, 2,000 or so slaves. Some expert witnesses shared with us. And so, you know, it wasn't legalized, so to speak, you know, like also in southern states. But the state also had like a fugitive slave law. So, for instance, you know, the state was not a sanctuary state. If you so happen to run away to California from Texas or something like that, you know, ordinary white citizens could be, you know, deputized to hunt you and, you know, take you to the authorities, and then you could be deported back to the South or wherever you were enslaved, and in some instances, like enslaved in the state. So, but to your point, though, the majority of our recommendations, they are based on eradicating the lingering, what we call the lingering badges and incidents of slavery, the afterlife of slavery, that still exists in this country. It still impacts descendants of slaves. So, you know, the recommendations might look different in, let's say, a southern state that might have a state reparations task force. But, you know, just to conclude, you know, the state of California, what we did, you know, we did have some reparations recommendations related to the state acknowledging its own role in perpetuating slavery. But when you think of reparations more substantively, to your point, like the cash payments, you know, those 5 areas, they're for post-slavery kind of atrocities against our group.
Thank you.
All right. Let me go ahead and get to the international show, and then I'll get to Rella and Black Majority State.
Yes, I want to respond to when the question was asked about the land, and Kamilah said that there will be the others that are not descendant, that are not of our lineage, that will also benefit from their land when their land was stolen from them, given back to them. So my question is, why is there still others being involved in our claims? Like, why is any other group being discussed in a reparations claim that's what's supposed to be specifically for our lineage? Because I was under the understanding that the task force which is advisory, was pressing not only the cash payments, but that everything is specifically for our lineage. So it shouldn't even be a discussion about anybody else, any other group in the discussion at all. I want to land here.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and get to no, Kamilah, did you want to respond to that comment?
Well, I was just gonna say I'm trying to find the actual language of the bill, so maybe I'll just get back to answering that. But I mean, the direct answer I think would be like that's a question for the author of the bill, who is Senator Bradford and the co-sponsors. And again, I think there's even though the deadline to introduce new bills is February 16th, there's still more opportunity to amend existing bills. You know what I mean? So, this is like the most kind of important part of the process. So I would say, again, stay engaged. You can, do those call to action, sign up for like the mailing list for like CJEC and LEAP and the other organizations out there. You can also go to CaliforniaReparations.info and sign up for updates and ways to get involved there as well. So let me get back to you on the actual language of the bill, just to confirm that, it is kind of like it's race-based in nature. It's not narrowly tailored to be lineage based.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and get to Rella. Rella, go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hey, Newstoter, can you come back to me?
Okay, let me go ahead and see if Black Majority State is there. Black, are you there? Okay, Black.
Yeah. I was working, but I can jump in. Okay, cool. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Okay, so I found out who that woman was. Her name is Lori Wilson. She's a Democrat from Sioux Sun City in California. She is the person that they keep putting in the press about this particular no cash payments. She's facing a primary in March. I looked that up. Her district, 500,000 people, of which about 60,000 are black, 12% black Americans in her district. So she doesn't necessarily have, black people at her back end or anything like that. So she can essentially do whatever she wants to, in my opinion, from a political perspective. There's not going to be a lot of fallout. But the question is this. So you talked about the state-based bureau, and the question is, how much is the annual budget of this state-based bureau going to be? How long will it be authorized for before it needs reauthorization and or will be subject to dismantling by political opposition?
Those are really good questions, and I think I hate to say that a lot of that is kind of still up in the air, and the legislative hearings on this piece of legislation are going to be really important to attend, stay engaged on. I know, Bradford had, there's activists out there that have their own ideas, obviously, and are thinking ahead of what that could look like. You have Bradford and other elected officials, well, mainly Bradford, stating, for instance, that the state could reserve, 0.5% of its annual budget, right? So making actual carve-outs in the state budget for this agency. So, yeah, I would just say, stay tuned, particularly for the hearings at the state capitol on this. But then also, staying engaged with Bradford in particular, since he's the lead author of the bill.
Can I add one thing? So I talked about state contracts. So here's where Black Americans have been locked out: state and federal contracts. And so I don't know. We talked about some sort of direct cash bill that may be introduced in the future. if they're going to try to program it, the programs, in my opinion, should involve education that leads to these contracts. Because if you have these contracts, these carve-outs, and our people are being educated in order to get the contracts, bid on the contracts, and there is this set-aside, then we could effectively build generational wealth. And that's really the area where we suffer the most from everything that I've been looking at in conversations over the past few months. So if they could implement an educational pipeline that gets us to these state contracts, I think that would be extremely beneficial.
All right. Kamilah, did you, is there anything you want to respond to that before I go to the next speaker?
I think that's a really innovative idea that definitely.
All righty. Rella, are you there now, or you want me to come back to you?
I'm here. Nope, I'm here. So my second question is, the requirements for state legislative bills to be on the books or in the assembly, is that a requirement for the task force or any one of the representative politicians like Senator Bradford to petition the federal government? Does he need a base at this point? Because the reason why I ask that is, and I'm going to invoke the resources that the people who are immigrating into the United States are getting in each state without commissions, right? And the information or the bills that the United States is using, they claim are immigration bills. However, and I know you also do international law, I'm wondering if those same languages in those bills that are on the state level also represent the migration that's happening with Black Americans across the country. And should we be using the same language to also be recognized for the resources within the states that are fighting for reparations? I know that was a long-winded question, but I hope you got it.
Sorry, can you just restate it really quickly?
Yeah, let me just say it. Okay, let me shorten it. So should we be petitioning the senators or the people who are our representatives to use the same language that the people who are able to come into the United States illegally or through citizenship and receive resources that we are not getting when we have to migrate? Because that was a part of the Great Migration, and other migrations because of harms were a part of our conditions before and after slavery. So can we use the same language that they are using to get resources and also be classified as migrants? Because it seems as if the reparations in regards to slavery is something separate. It needs to be quantified, it needs to be looked at and studied. Okay. But the immediate need for people right now is not being addressed. Resources, representation, all of that is not being addressed. However, people who are coming into the country, they're able to get those same things without a commissions, without a study, without any type of full repetitions of harm within our country, right? But they're coming in and they're being classified as refugees. So are we too to use those same language when we are trying to fight for resources along with what's happening with reparations?
Well, I mean, I have a kind of nuanced answer to this question that some people may not or understand. I mean, not necessarily not understand, but they may not, immediately, I think, understand. But, I kind of reject the framing and just stay with me that, well, no, to answer your question, I don't think we need to classify ourselves as migrants, to receive any sort of benefit or, particular policy oriented towards us. And then also I kind of also reject the framing that they're getting benefits that we don't necessarily get. And let me explain to you why. So for instance, the state of California has 100% state funded program, for instance, that provides, elderly or disabled immigrants $500 to $1,000 a month or something like that, because they're not eligible for Social Security. Right? They don't have Social Security numbers, and so the state has to fund that through itself or with nonprofits, because again, they're not eligible for that federally. Because we're citizens, we have Social Security numbers. When it comes to that point, we'll be able to get that type of assistance. So it's it's the state making a choice when any given state, like California, makes a choice to do these types of programs for immigrants. One, it's their prerogative and their right as a state, but then it's also saying they're showing their values. They want to show that, they're humanitarian in nature, even if they don't have a specific responsibility for these migrants showing up to their doors, showing up to their state's borders. And so why am I saying all that to say? I feel like that just strengthens our argument, but not in a way that is antagonistic to migrants. This is to say, okay, you're showing your values, that you're a state that's humanitarian, that you care about, humans in general, even if you don't have a necessary responsibility, even though that gets nuanced, because under immigration law, there's something called the right to seek asylum. So if someone comes from another country and is saying that they're being politically persecuted, sexually persecuted, persecuted, technically under immigration law, you are supposed to take them, right? So that's also another thing. But that's neither here nor there. I think the larger point is you can leverage that in a way that is not mutually beneficial, but it's beneficial to our position to say, okay, well, in terms of compensation, the task force showed that you all are responsible, that this state is actually responsible for perpetuating harm against us, right? So if you're, providing so-called benefits to groups of people where there is no history of that type of harm, right, then you're definitely on the hook, and you're definitely responsible for providing, policy specific to us because of this, of this proof and of this history that we have. And so, I mean, that's why I'm proud of the task force's work, because it is very comprehensive and it can be used to push for policy for us in various different sectors of the state and in various different industries as well.
Right. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because if they are providing immediate need for people who are able to come in, and there are bills and laws of languages that people don't readily know unless you study international law or the full immigration law for a state. It seems very contradictory for a state not to want to, even with the CDC saying, hey, or we did a poll and majority of the people don't want cash payment, but yet they are okay with giving out cash compensatory benefits to people who have not been harmed in the state of California, right? It seems to be a bit contradictory not to also have that same outlook for the citizens of the state of California who also have never been repaired, which also falls in line with reparations, but it would be, I don't know if it would be civil or what, but I'm saying the language that's used seems to work for these group of people coming in, but the representation and the people who want to also help the people coming in their humanitarian efforts are ignoring the same immediate need for the people who also are descendants, I think, in the state of California, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Pink Ice. Pink Ice, thank you for your contribution on Cash App. Guys, we got over almost close to 130 people up in here. So we can get anybody else that can donate at least $1 to the actual platform. It'll be greatly appreciated because, like I said, we got close to 130 people up in here. So if you have $1 or $2 even that you can spare, please think about donating to the platform. $Newstoter, $Newstoter. Once again, Newstoter is the largest Black-owned, Black American news media curation platform today in America. Once again, $Newstoter, $Newstoter. For those that don't have Cash App, the Venmo and PayPal is up in the Jumbotron, as well as for those that's over there on YouTube. Cash App is on the actual screen. The PayPal, Venmo is up in the actual description as well too. Like I say, any amount, if you have $1 that you can donate, it is greatly appreciated and will be put to use to continue the platform. I know we had Black Majority State up here. Divine, see you had your hand up. Did you want to speak as well too?
Yeah, I wanted to ask.
Well, hold on, real quick. I just want to know if you want to speak, get your hand up because I got it. Black Majority State is actually in front of you, and then I'm gonna come back to you. So I just wanted to see those that want to speak. Just put your hands up. Black, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it to you, DJ. Real quick, hold it down for 1 second.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. This has been a great space. This will probably be my last question, but so to Miss Rella's point, there was a space I was in, and if the folks are in a space and they'd like to come up and drop that information, there was a time where we were actually designated as migrants at the federal level, and there's this whole report about it. So being in that space, what I learned, and shout out to the people who do that space regularly, is that much of that language is identical to what they're using. And in fact, the host made it very, very clear that this is identical language that they're essentially remixing and refreshing for these people. My question is this, is there anything, because I'm pretty sure you guys addressed it as a part of the harm, and I heard like a very diplomatic political answer about how California is choosing to spend their money. But is there anything referencing this demographic shift, the fact that, 5%, 3%, 2%, 1% at some point, Black Americans in California are going to find it very, very difficult, especially with the gentrification, everything else that's happening, but that they're going to increasingly find it very, very difficult to manage without, enormous sums of wealth in that state. So is there anything anywhere, or is this just kind of like the elephant in the room that nobody's wanting to address at this particular point in time?
Well, I will say that I think that's what made the task force's cash payments recommendation particularly powerful and potent, because we discussed, part of it, like what makes a Black Californian, Black American Californians, enslaved Californian. What about the slaves who, born and raised in California but were pushed out, priced out? What are they owed, if anything? There are a lot of task force members who thought they weren't owed anything because they left. But, I had to make the argument. I had to do my research. I had to call up, for instance, the state of California has a reparations fund for victims of forced sterilization, women who were forcibly sterilized either in prison or in mental hospitals. And so, I caught them up to see, like, what do you all do when, a victim no longer lives in the state of California? Are they still eligible? And, they are basically like, yeah, the harm, they were still harmed. They were harmed in the state of California. The atrocity happened in California. The injury, the crime happened in California. And so it doesn't matter if they lived in Timbuktu, right? They're still owed. So, I pretty much push for that. Also, under international law, there's something called, the right of return. And so kind of like couching and conceptualizing the fact that, the descendants of American slaves who no longer live in California, but, were born and raised here, they should still be eligible for compensation. And so, if, and I'm going to say when, cash payments becomes a reality in the state of California, that's also going to apply to descendants of American slaves who now live elsewhere. And that's going to hopefully incentivize them to come back to the state and increase our numbers as well. So that's kind of like the long answer to the question. But that, again, related to the cash payments legislation. There is legislation, again, from Senator Bradford. I think it's SB 107 that would give cash or housing grants to, buy new homes, to pay off mortgages of existing homes and homeowner insurance for descendants of American slaves. In that bill, it's not clear if that's going to apply to just current residents or not. But let's say that applied to, people who were born and raised but may not live in the state. That could also kind of indirectly kind of increase our numbers and population here too, if we have a better chance at owning homes here.
Alrighty, I'm back. Divine, I guess it was your turn.
Hey, I wanted to say thanks for this space. It's good to see all the people in here all kind of together on one topic. My question is to Kamilah, how long are you personally going to be fighting this fight until you decide that maybe you got to approach it from another angle?
So what would that angle be for you to say?
I don't know. I'm asking how long could you still go this route, and how much time could pass until you maybe decide that you have to go an alternative route?
It's a good question. I think for the legislative process, the Legislative Black Caucus is saying it's going to take, at least 3 years to, implement all of the task force recommendations, 100 recommendations or so. I mean, if we're just talking about California, I'm going to give it that time, maybe 2-3 years, see, really, I'm hoping cash payments either gets introduced February 16th, or, there should be a push for the next legislative session. Federally, I don't know. I'm still kind of scoping the scenery, as they say, to figure out like what's going on federally. You know what I mean? And a lot is up in the air federally. But I'm gonna continue to fight for reparations, like no matter what, like until the very end. So.
Oh, I expect you to.
Real quick, let me give a shout out to my man Rottweiler, Kerry, and Hazardous Media for their contributions on Cash App. Thank you guys. It is appreciated. Let me go ahead and get to Black Majority State, and anybody else down here that wants to speak, come on up here and speak, because we're not going to keep the space going too much longer. I'm sure Kamilah's had a pretty long day, and I don't want to keep it going too long. So we're trying to get those that want to come up here and speak, ask some questions or whatever, come on up here. And we're not going to hold the space too much longer. Like I say, tomorrow night up in the Jumbotron, we're going to be talking about the illegals with the actual debit cards that they're getting. And we're also going to be talking about this situation going on with the actual descendants of the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis experiment that they conducted. They're trying to. They're talking about giving them scholarships and $5 million. And like I said, that post picked up pretty good steam that I actually put out today from Newstoter, and quite a few people responded to it. I think it's got over 100-some thousand views. So we'll be holding a space on that tomorrow night broadcast, guys. So make sure you check that out. Let me go ahead and go to Black Majority State. And like I say, anybody else that wants to speak, feel free to come on up here because the space isn't going to go too much longer.
Okay, thank you again. I'm sorry, you mentioned something that kind of triggered me to come back up. So I know Gavin he terms out in 2026 is what I believe it is. And so that 3-year window is kind of a year past him being there. Being in California, do you see anybody who's going to come and champion, the study and everything else behind him that would make that, a thing where you have a continuity of care, if you will, as he exits out and starts looking at the presidency?
That's a good question. I think the people running, for governor, there's a lot. Once he's gone, for instance, the current lieutenant governor, Elena Kay, she is running for governor. I think she's generally supportive. I know Attorney General Rob Bonta, he's running for governor, and the Reparations Task Force was housed under his office, so I know he's generally supportive. And then you have, Superintendent Tony Thurman, who's Black American, partly, and he's also generally supportive. So I think that necessarily won't be an issue. Because the front runners, to my knowledge, have been generally supportive. I can't necessarily speak on actually the current Lieutenant Governor Elena, but I know, for instance, Attorney General Bonta, for instance, it's supportive. So, but we'll see.
Hey DJ, do you see anybody requesting to come up and speak? When I look, I see what it says it had 2 people requesting, but I don't see them now. I see it says 1 person, so I don't. Do you see anybody requesting to speak in the space? DJ, you there? Okay, DJ may be in the Matrix. Let me give a shout out real quick to Andre. Andre, thank you for your contribution on Cash App. I'm not sure if DJ's in the Matrix or not, but I guess because he had his hand up, I won't let him go ahead and speak. But okay, anybody else in this space that wants to come up and speak? So we're gonna keep it open. We're not trying to keep our guest speak up here too long because I know she's had a long day. She's on the web.
Questions on YouTube, bro.
What's that? What did you just?
I'm saying you got asking questions on YouTube to ask Kamilah. Check your DM.
Like what questions? I mean, if you see them there, ask them a question because I hadn't really been paying attention to it.
Okay. Excuse me. Here's one. Why did none of the Black Caucus members' 14 bills they're presenting on Friday involve cash reparations for Black foundational Americans? At the bill, all the bills include all the community. And not to say that you will have an answer to that because you're not on the Black Caucus, but just folks asking in general.
I don't know if is she there? Kamilah, are you there?
I'm here.
Did you want to answer that question that he just read, or?
Oh, I didn't hear it.
DJ, repeat that question again.
Hold on 1 second. Let me go back to it. Where is it at? Scroll back.
While you looking for it, let me go to
I got it. Why did none of the Black Caucus? And you're not a member of the Black Caucus, so you don't have to fully answer it in general. But just folks asking questions. Why did none of the Black Caucus members' 14 bills they're presenting on Friday involve cash reparations for Black foundational Americans? All the bills include the community.
I don't think she can hear you.
Yeah, I don't think she can't hear me, bro.
I can come back up.
Okay. Yeah, you may.
Might be my phone.
You want me to drop you down and you come back up?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me drop her down 1 second.
Share the room out, y'all. Make sure y'all make a page on Newstoter too. Newstoter.
If you see her back in the. Okay, I see her now. Let me. I just sent her the invite to speak. When she accepts it, okay, I see it in the speaking section. The speaker. Okay, can DJ can let's first see if she can hear you.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. Miss Moore.
Yeah, I can hear now. Thanks.
Okay, so for sure. And just to get back to the question real quick, I mean, you don't have to answer this because you're not a member of the Black Caucus out there in California. Why did none of the Black Caucus members 14 bills they're presenting on Friday involve cash reparations for Black foundational Americans? All the bills include the community.
Yes, so I'm not entirely sure. I just, what's quoted, in the press release where they announced the bills, they said, reparations is more than cash payments, and they're prioritizing more structural issues like criminal justice reform and education. And, that's kind of me, what they said in their press release. So that's kind of what I'm holding them to, their rationale. Senator Bradford, Senator Bradford, he introduced, stronger, in my opinion, reparations legislation than the Black Caucus more broadly, but even he didn't introduce any legislation that represented standalone cash payments. And, since the task force, he has gone on record in his opinion saying, in his words, reparations was never about cash payments. It was about land. And, he likens reparations in his vision, in his eyes, as, what he said, like the GI Bill, like, having certain programs, things like that, what he just introduced, like, housing grants to help purchase homes and things like that. In his eyes, that's what he's seen as seeds as reparations. We have Reggie Jones Sawyer, who was on the task force against Senator Bradford. Reggie Jones Sawyer were the only two elected officials who were on the task force and are in the Legislative Black Caucus. So, of course, they have influence in transporting information about the task force and, to the Black Caucus and things like that. And so, Reggie Jones Sawyer, even during the task force, made comments to the media saying, cash payments are likely not to be, successful in implementing at this point in time, and focusing on more structural things. And so, again, I can only take people at, what they say publicly, and, citing the CLBC's press release, what Bradford and Reggie has said in the media and task force meetings. That's likely why we don't see any cash payments in their package.
All right. Let me go ahead and get to the company. The company, go ahead and unmute your mic. The company, are you there?
Hello. Sorry. Can you hear me? Mic check.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak. Do you think that this question is for Ms. Moore, of course? Do you think that they're waiting for the structure of this Freedmen's Agency to, structured so employed people actually be operating, and then then maybe some type of payments would be made out through this organization to, do the work that we all hope it does, like gives compensation for land, does, what do you call it, the genealogy and keeping birth records and records of Black Americans through their descendants and everything, so forth. Do you think that that's what they're waiting for? And then once this SB 490 goes through, then, we'll probably see things starting to move along as far as like programs and payments and whatnot.
Thank you for that question. I'm glad you raised it because it's what I'm going to say is actually really important and it's directly related to that. Optimistically, right? We would say hopefully, the reason why there's no standalone cash payments bill now is because, all of the CLBC is, standing willing and ready to support Senate Bill 490, which would create that agency that would have that branch that would, process and pay out the cash payments. But if you read the press release that the CLBC introduced January 31st with their 14 bills, Senate Bill 490, that agency bill, is not one of their priorities. It's not listed as one of their priority bills. And so we cannot assume that the Legislative Black Caucus is going to support Senate Bill 490 because it's not in their priority bills. Why is it in their priority bills? That might be a room for a whole nother day. But again, we can't even assume that the Black elected officials are going to support that agency. That is so critical that's the lifeline, really, for cash payments. And so that's why it's really important for the community to stay engaged and put pressure on the Legislative Black Caucus to, introduce cash payments legislation, but to also, support and pass SB 490 and the bills that lay the foundation for cash compensation.
Okay, that's all the questions I had for tonight. I land my plane. So from what I understand, that our next fight in California is to push for SB 490 so that we can have the agencies needed so that it can receive the fundings to do whatever it is that we needed to do.
Exactly.
All righty. We're going to get to the last few speakers of the night, the last three hands up, guys, because we're going to be closing this space out in just a second here. I'm going to go ahead and get to, and each speaker, I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes, and then we're going to go on. Kamilah, she can go ahead and answer the question, and we're going to go on to the next speaker because we're trying to get her up out of here by at least 10 o'clock. So let me go ahead and go to Rella, and then we'll get to Window and No Cap.
Thank you. Okay, so Kamilah, my question is for the CLBC. CLBC. Their influence right now is very strong in regards to even the reports. I know, Senator Bradford and John Sawyer, who were part of the task force, with the conflicts that Reggie John Sawyer did display during the hearing, and also being against cash payments during the hearing. Since there is it seems like there could be maybe some form of, what would be the right word? A conflict of interest, per se. And it seems like that he could be possibly going against even the report. Because if the report even substantiates why cash payments along with a Freedmen's Bureau would be viable and supportive for the descendants, could that be also a conflict of interest with having the reject of the CLBC not including cash payments? And why if you can explain to me, I'm trying to wrap my head on why it is the CLBC has such a large a large say in how the information from the report should be implemented. If you can just kind of bear with me for a second.
I think that the second part of your question, I had the same kind of questions. I asked around, after they presented the bill, like, for instance, could non-Black legislators have taken the initiative to introduce reparations legislation, including cash payments? Like, why this kind of like, compulsory reliance on the CLBC? And I think the response was just kind of like, other, non-Black legislators could have introduced legislation, but would they have? Like, who else is going to do it? At least initially, but the, Black legislators in the legislature. And, if a non-Black legislator introduced something like even cash payments, like, would that have ticked off the Black caucus and then cause, the particular issues within that? It's just like, it's so petty. But the idea is just like, was that, the task force kind of passed the baton to the legislature, but particularly, the Black caucus to shepherd and, introduce, at least initially, the first set. So, yeah.
All right. Shout out to Brother Moku. Thank you for your contribution on Cash App. Let me go ahead and get to Wendell. Wendell, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and then we're going to go on to the next speaker, too.
Thank you again for having this space. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Just a statement, Kamilah Moore. If the Biden administration, I know I don't want you to necessarily speak your political agenda, but the Biden administration ran on HR 40, which was a commission. We don't need a commission. If the Biden administration does not have on this platform to do reparations, he and Kamala Harris, why should we be embracing his candidacy to put him back in office? Because he's going to need the Black vote to beat Trump. So it's really a statement and a question, but why should we be embracing Biden? It's not necessarily the Kamilah Moore. It's an open question. Why should the Black community be embracing Biden if reparations is not on this platform? That's it. Thank you very much. That's all.
All righty. We go ahead and get to is it no cap?
Yes, thank you. I would say this: without cash payments, direct cash payments, then it's like Dr. King died in vain. This is not in the spirit of Dr. King. This is not what reparations are about. If reparations are about cash payment and that kind of assistance for everyone else, but not us, it rings with an odd familiarity. You understand? That same denial that we've been getting for hundreds of years. And we recognize it for what it is. On a street level, we call it bullshit. Right here in this room, we call it for what we see it. It's, I'm white and I say
hey,
so.
No cap. Try not to curse, though. Go ahead.
Yes, I hear you. When it comes down to, and I'm sorry for that, go ahead and continue after this. I'll say this: we all have to agree and stand in solidarity that our move for our empowerment is our future, and nothing else is paramount than that. Thank you for your work, Sister Kamilah, and thank you too for having me.
No problem. Appreciate you coming up tonight. DJ, you want to say something real quick, and then we're going to let Kamilah get ready to close it out for the night?
Yeah, just another question real quick. And this relates to what we was talking about, the housing real fast. Barbie was eating real fast. So a question over here on YouTube. How will that happen? The surplus of homes are not available when corporation and real estate investors are buying up single-family homes and apartment units. In addition, there are currently 93,000 eviction warrants being filed in Los Angeles County, along on top of the 50,000 eviction warrants already filed in LA County. Let me know if you want me to repeat it. So.
Oh no, those are all points well taken.
Just to add in this one last thing, I'm sorry. So the person put in context just to end it or land their plane. So where are they going to get these new homes from? But go ahead, though.
I said those are points well taken. Someone that I know had just sent me some, work that grassroots activists are doing now to kind of end like corporate landlordship, in the state of California. That is a big issue, not only here but really across the country. I don't really have all the answers. So, we're going to see. And again, that's where these legislative hearings are going to be really important to attend and stay engaged with. That's where the meat in the sausage is made, is in these hearings that are going to come up related to this legislation. So, that's where I'm going to be staying in tune to really kind of have more concrete answers to these questions for sure.
All righty. Well, I definitely, Kamilah, appreciate you coming on tonight, and I hope this addressed some of the questions that people had. I know, it was a number of people that came and spoke tonight, and wish we could have got more people to come up and and ask some questions as well too. But at the same time, I know some people just want to sit back and listen, which is cool with me. But we did have a number of speakers that actually came up and actually spoke. So I see we got a couple of hands up, guys, but I'm getting ready to close the space out for the night. So we will be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, thank you, Kamilah, for coming out and to the actual Newstoter space. Hopefully we can do something in the future again. And you can, share your information with the crowd as well too, guys. On that note, we will see you guys tomorrow night. Peace, everybody. Have a good
Newstoter, can Kamilah give out the information for the call to action real fast?
Yes, ma'am. But I will say this for future reference: when I'm hitting that last note to close it out, love, that's ball game.
I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry.
That's ball game, as they say.
Purple pill.
We go ahead. You said you wanted Kamilah to go ahead.
So I put it in the Jumbotron again. It's the call to action by CJEC, where you can call or email the CLBC and ask them or demand that they introduce legislation that's cash payments related. And then you can also subscribe to another mailing list, California Reparations.info. So yeah.
And on that note, guys, we're going to close it out. So we'll see y'all tomorrow night when we talk about the illegals and the debit cards and the actual descendants of the Tuskegee experiment being given chump change and scholarships as a way of appeasement. So peace. Everybody be safe. Have a good night. Thank you, Kamilah Moore, for coming out in this space with us tonight. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night. So everybody have a good one.
Peace.